Now, it's been nearly 8 years of the Buhari administration in Nigeria, years in which we've seen insecurity and the attempts to fight back against it, economic turmoil and the uncertainty that has come with it. That uncertainty, it is almost universally agreed, has deepened or been deepened by the government's low revenue base and its policy of borrowing. Many would argue, though, that in spite of all that debt, many of the promises made by Mr. Buhari's APC government back in 2015 are as yet unfulfilled. And now we're seeing a new set of presidential candidates, including one from the APC, promising that they'll do this, that, and the other thing, without telling us how those promises will be paid for. One observer said that, like a recurring nightmare, he can hear the voices of politicians that are chock full of insincerity, most of them divorced from the reality of the people. But still, they come with their promises. Well, to get the perspective of the ruling APC party and all that, I'm joined now in the studio by a member of the Strategic Communications Directorate of the APC Presidential Campaign Council, Segun Tomori. Thank you very much indeed for coming in.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
So 3 weeks into the campaign, your ruling party, which should be leading by example, is yet to release its manifesto. 3 weeks after the official start of the campaign, we really have no idea what the ruling APC and its presidential candidate intend to do for Nigeria. So we don't know how you intend to move forward from the nearly 8 years of President Buhari, which you admit, I'm sure you'll admit, many Nigerians will not remember very fondly.
Thank you for having me. You said we are 3 weeks into the campaigns, but the campaign was officially kicked off. Doesn't mean that as a party you must start on the day it kicked off. We have close to 5 months of campaign, and a lot of internal work is going to ensure that we bring out policy initiatives, we bring out a manifesto that will resonate with Nigerians and reverberate across this country. We've been working round the clock internally. You know, campaigns is more than the public rallies. If you look at the concept of public rallies, you see that most of the crowd that attend APC rallies can also go to PDP rallies, go to LP rallies. But what are we doing? This is a serious campaign, and we're not taking it for granted. Our presidential candidate, the Presidential Campaign Council, they are working tirelessly to provide solutions to the myriads of challenges, that is facing Nigeria, some of which are being addressed by the present administration. But we plan to be innovative. We plan to think out of the box. We pride ourselves as producing the presidential candidate that is a thinker, that is a builder, that has the antecedent, of literally turning water out of stone. We saw it in Lagos. I grew up in Lagos, born and bred in Lagos. I know what Lagos was like pre-1999. So if he's telling you he's going to do this, he's going to give us double-digit economic growth, he's going to have resources, to reposition the economy, he knows what to do. And I listened to his speech yesterday, and to be honest, if I was not a member of the APC and I was an undecided voter, if I listened to Asiwaju Tinubu yesterday in Kaduna, standing for over 1 hour, reeling out, quite unprecedented policy initiatives and what he would do, multi-sectoral approach, of what he would do in different sectors, I would vote for Asiwaju Tinubu.
Well, let's be very...
And I will tell you categorically, from what he said yesterday and from the plans that he outlined, that will be outlined officially in the coming days, Asiwaju Tinubu is the best bet for Nigeria.
Well, you would say that. I mean, that's not really... I mean, we're not interested in just open rhetoric in support of your candidate, which obviously we understand, because, I mean, you are one of his campaign team, so you would say that. He reeled out a lot of things yesterday, but he didn't tell us how he was going to pay for them or how he was going to flesh them out. As I said, 3 weeks into the campaign, not only have you not released your manifesto, but we have no idea when you're going to do so. I hope for your sake that it's not going to be like when the APC came into power in 2015
Nothing like
and
that.
took more than 6 months to announce its cabinet.
Nothing
because
like
that would be an absolute catastrophe
I
for
can
you.
assure you that in the coming days, very soon, the official manifesto, will be put out, and the campaign, the PCC, will be formally inaugurated. Everything, the T's and the I's have been crossed, and we are set to launch in the coming days, very shortly.
Right.
And we'll take Nigeria by the storm. So all the details you're expecting about how to fund, the ambitious programs of our presidential candidate will be laid out. And I think he threw some snippets into it yesterday. He spoke about solid minerals, for instance. And I know, because as a geologist, I know that at least we have commercial deposits of minerals that can earn us foreign exchange in at least 34, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, if you look at Atiku's manifesto, he says pretty much the same thing.
I don't know anything about Atiku. And I don't want to talk about him. I'm here to talk about my candidate.
No, I understand
and
that.
I'm telling you that.
But you're talking about your candidate in comparison to other candidates.
When you talk about Atiku, we've seen Atiku. Atiku has been vice president. What did he do? He sold public assets to cronies, for pittance. But we are telling you about the man whose antecedent, engineered financial re-engineering of Lagos from 600 million to almost 8.5 billion when he left office. And today, hovering around 50 to 51 billion monthly financial re-engineering. We are talking about a man that met a waste problem in Lagos and transformed it. Brought public sector participation, into the management of LOMA, Lagos Waste Management Authority. We are talking about a man that established the Lagos Metropolitan Transport Authority, that developed the intermodal transport system for Lagos. That's where you got, the red line, the blue line, the ferry system. I think we have 22 functional ferry systems in Lagos and still growing and all that. And we see that the red line and blue line are almost commissioned, which is just 2 out of the 7 lines that will be commissioned for Lagos. So we are seeing a man that turned the disaster of Barbage, overflooding Barbage, into an asset, into a location of national assets. Not only solved the problem permanently, but created wealth through the Eco-Atlantic City, one of the best cities in Africa, in the continent, if I want to say. So we are talking about a thinker. We are talking about somebody that has a visionary, that is able to think and galvanize the best human resource to achieve results. And that's Asiwaju Tinubu. And we are confident that he will replicate that on the national scale.
Okay, well, let me put it this way. Since we haven't seen his manifesto yet, I mean, you're talking about all these things that happened in the past. We haven't seen his manifesto, so we don't know how he's going to deal with national problems.
Yeah, so you get ready
Since we can't look forward with the APC, since we don't have a manifesto and you are yet to launch your campaign officially, let's look back, because that's how we're going to see where we're going to go from here. Let's look back to the APC government of President Buhari. Tell us where you think that government has made achievements in the last nearly 8 years that it's been in office.
Thank you very much. First, if I'll like to cast the minds of Nigerians back to pre-2015, before the Buhari administration, about the size of Belgium in this country were in the hands of terrorists. Analysts, say about a large swath of land of Nigerian territory were in the hands of bandits. We saw bombs going off. I'm sure you're sitting here, exquisite, looking all dapper. You'd have been scared stiff if the state of anomie that happened in 2015 sustained or was still persistent.
Well, actually, I was in Nigeria between 2014 and 2015. But I covered the election.
Okay, but you can bear me witness that from 2015 till today, there's not been any bomb blast in Abuja, the capital city. Bombs were going off then. You had this day bomb blast. You have Yanya, and
there have been recent incidents in Abuja.
Yeah,
it may not be a bomb blast, but there've been recent incidents.
Yes, but what I'm telling you is, the problems we met in terms of Boko Haram. Boko Haram has severely degraded from a fighting, from a force that can occupy territories to those that target, soft targets here and there, very little, minimal. And I saw the global index for terrorism. They said Nigeria improved drastically. I'm not sure of the statistics, but I think by over, the deaths by terrorism improved by over 47% or more than that. I can't remember.
Actually, that's not accurate, because we have had
deaths by terrorism. You can check it.
You see,
I wish I can Google it here. I think 2021. And it said there's been drastic improvement.
I think
in deaths by terrorism.
Have to put it in perspective,
in Nigeria,
which is deaths by insecurity.
No, by terrorism. You have to.
Insecurity.
I'm not the one. I'm not the one that does the index. I'm telling you.
I understand what you mean, but it makes no difference to a victim.
It makes a difference.
No, hold on.
It makes a difference. You know why?
No, hold on. Let me just make.
You know why?
It makes
because
no
it's
difference.
It's an international index.
It makes.
And I'm not in a position to tell them that they should categorize it into full insecurity or full terrorism.
It makes no difference. Can I? I need to make a point.
I need to make a point.
There is no difference.
I need to make a point.
There is no difference between, for me, somebody who is a victim, it makes no difference whether the person who attacks them is a terrorist, a bandit, an armed robber, or a kidnapper. It makes no difference. Well, the point is the issue of insecurity.
Yes, and I'm going to that. So I said, so now we've severely degraded Boko Haram. I agree that new contemporary security challenges, cropped up, like kidnapping, banditry, and all that. But what have we seen? We've seen the administration tackling it headlong, procuring sophisticated ammunitions for both our Air Force and the military. And we are seeing the results. We are seeing results, in military bombardments of both terror, bandits, and, kidnapper locations. And we should also note that this administration, the remaining victims of the Kaduna train attack, were released through the decisive efforts of this administration. So we've made progress. But government is a continuum. You won't say because a government has existed, then everything, even in America, you have shooting. Mass shooting, is a major challenge, even for the Biden administration. So it's a work in progress. And we say that this administration has laid the foundation. Our presidential candidate said yesterday, and I quote him, he said, there must be more boots on the ground, that the number of our security forces military pales into insignificance compared to Nigeria's population, and I agree with him. So that's a starting point. Well, we're also saying that we are now building consensus around state police, decentralization of the police force. Just recently, some months ago, the Northern Governors Forum and the traditional rulers from the North endorsed state police. So, and our presidential candidate spoke yesterday that that's a constitutional amendment. We need to take care of that, but he would rally consensus building to see that we do what is necessary in terms of constitutional amendment to put all these things together. As we do that alongside, more boots on the ground, more equipment, more technology to tackle, contemporary security challenges.
Okay, can I come in here?
Yes, please.
Right, let's look at the economy. Economy absolutely vital.
Absolutely.
Every way you look at it, because oftentimes it is a bad economy fuels insecurity. So you really can't tackle insecurity unless you tackle the economy. Let's look at what the next leadership, whether it is APC, PDP, it doesn't have to be APC.
Our candidates
anyway, hold on. Can I just make the point?
Thank you. Yeah.
Let's look at what the next leadership will face after nearly 8 years of the Buhari, or actually after 8 years of the Buhari APC government. And however you try to sell it, the official statistics are terrifying, and they come from the government's own National Bureau of Statistics. Look at the Consumer Price Index, or CPI, which measures the rate of change in prices of goods and services. It rose to 20.52%, the highest in 17 years. Look at other macro and microeconomic indicators. They've all got dramatically worse. The fiscal deficit of the federal government hit 3.9 trillion in the first quarter of this year. Nigeria's total debt stock increased by 439% from December 2011 to December 2021. while the domestic debt component increased by 242% from 5.6 trillion to 19.2 trillion. The foreign component increased by 1,689% from 885 billion to 15.8 trillion. In the same period, the federal government's borrowing has gone up by over 7,000%. And from January to April this year, debt servicing has exceeded revenue by 308 billion. I mean, based on those figures alone, and there are others like unemployment, but based on just these figures, isn't it clear to you that the APC government has failed and that this country needs to act by going in a different direction away from the storm that your government has created?
The APC government, within the context of global economic crisis and headwinds, has performed modestly, and I say that with all sense of urgency and all that. I remember, was it yesterday or 2 days ago, the protest erupted in Brazil, protests over rising prices of goods and services. I think thousands, tens of thousands in Paris, France. And I do my research, I read about UK and developed countries. I see surging prices of gas and other staples and all that. So that's to show you that Nigeria is not isolated from the global economic headwind that is affecting the world in the aftermath of COVID-19 and as a result of the Russian-Ukraine war. So I saw IMF forecast, I think for next year, telling us that Nigeria is likely to grow by 3.2%. Other countries, forecasted are not even expected to grow at that level. But what are we saying? This administration implemented a COVID-19 stimulus plan, that literally puts funds, credit in the hands of artisans, MSMEs, and a lot of other sectors of critical sectors of the economy that mitigated the effect. So what we are saying is the new administration, which we are hopeful will be President Tinubu's administration, will go forward from there to take it a notch higher, bring innovation, into his approach, bring more innovation, bring more vision to look at how we can address the revenue shortage problem. I, for one, think we have an acute revenue problem in Nigeria. I look at the budget of South Africa. It's about 5 times Nigeria's annual budget, and their population pales into insignificance compared to Nigeria at about 55.
So why has the government failed to increase that revenue
So
base?
now that's what we are saying. This administration has tried its best in the way it knows. But what we are now telling you is that we are bringing somebody that can think out of the box, whose antecedent has showed us that he can literally break water out of stone, to think out of the box, look at untapped areas in which you can harness for growth, for revenue, to create wealth. And when you look at, you spoke about the debt problem, about this administration. I think we should give this administration some credit in the area of infrastructural renewal. We've seen, rails that other administrations, even when they had high oil prices, said were not possible in Nigeria. We've seen Lagos-Ibadan Express Railway. I've been on that rail. It's a standard modern rail. You understand? They said it wasn't possible. From conceptualization to implement to building and everything, it's there today. We've seen the second Niger Bridge, the single largest, I think, most expensive project in that region since 1965, when you had the first Niger Bridge. We've seen a lot. We've seen Warri-Itakpe Railway. We've seen projects, road projects, infrastructure projects across the 36 states of the Federation. We've even seen interventions in power supply targeted at critical areas like the health, the education. Energizing Economics Initiative. Energizing Economics Initiative, targets power supply, dedicated power supply to universities, to federal teaching hospitals and all that.
You mean the universities that have not been functioning for the last?
I'm talking about some sectors. So I'm talking about the economy. So, and we are also seeing the Siemens deal in which, most of the equipment are arriving for the Siemens deal that will add generation and all that. But that is not, this is an outgoing administration. We are talking about an incoming that is bringing impetus, that is bringing renewed hope to Nigerians, that has a track record of thinking out of the box to solve a problem.
No, but you
you
have to admit that for the Nigerian people to want to give your candidate a chance, they have to look back on what the same political party that had a president in office for 8 years has done.
Yes.
And to use that as an example to say, okay, these people have done very well, let's bring in another person. When you look at the figures, let's take youth unemployment. The largest voting bloc right now are the youth, and you are one of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Amongst the 15 to 34-year-olds, unemployment rose by 8.4% from 8.4% in 2011 to 42.49% in 2020. And as I said, that is the largest voting demographic in Nigeria. How do you account for that?
Well, this administration, at inception, I think around 2016, implemented or conceptualized what is now touted as the largest social investment program in sub-Saharan Africa. In other parts of the world, developing countries, African countries, you have social protection program. In the history of our country, if I'm not mistaken, we've not seen anything that is similar to a social protection program. And this administration started it, the social investment program, and which the World Bank and a lot of multilateral agencies,
but you're not answering the question.
I'm going somewhere, said is unarguably the largest in sub-Saharan Africa. And the different components of that program, one addressed youth unemployment, the Empower, skill acquisition, youth unemployment. Some addressed a credit facility for, petty traders, market women, people on the artisans on the lower cadre. You have the school feeding program, that has boosted, in the north and some other parts of the country, school enrollment in primary school and all that. So what I'm saying is there's been attempt, this administration has made an attempt to address the problem. But because of our population, it might seem like a drop in the ocean. What we should be doing is to escalate those programs, bring in new innovations to ensure that we match up. And for us to match up, we have to tackle the revenue problem. We have to create wealth so that we can be able to substantially.
Yeah, but you've had 8 years to do
we can be able
the unemployment rate has gone from 8.4% to more than 42%.
Yeah, that's why we're saying that.
What have you done with the resources you've got?
I will leave you with the Bible quote that says, and I love that Bible quote. It says that if you are faithful in little things, you can be entrusted with big things.
Yeah,
so
not if you're going backwards rather than going forward.
Our candidate is faithful in little things. He has showed the capacity. He has shown the capacity to transform, multi-sectoral transform.
Right. Okay. Well, we've got about 30 seconds.
And not only transform, but also conceptualize a master plan. For Lagos, he is coming to conceptualize that master plan.
We've got a very little period of time left.
And also bring renewed hope and address all those issues.
But of course, as I'm sure you will admit, it is up to the Nigerian people to make the decision about whether their lives have improved or not in the last 8 years. And that decision will be made in February.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Ours is to convince them, the majority, to see the reason, to stick with our party, to stick with our candidate. And I tell Nigerians that we're bringing renewed hope to Nigeria. And we're bringing a campaign and a manifesto that will not only resonate, but will reverberate across this country and will address frontally, the myriads of our challenges. Thank you very much.
Well, I have to say it's actually been very interesting talking with you. I think you're a very bright young man.
Thank you so much.
And I hope the APC Presidential Campaign Council gives you greater exposure.
Thank you.
I think you've done extremely well.
We
shall wait to see that manifesto.
Yeah.
And Segun Tomori is a member of the Strategic Communications Directorate of the APC Presidential Campaign Council. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. My pleasure.